Tonight I find myself pondering, what is true death? At some point, each of us will pass from this world to the next, and perhaps our beliefs about life after death will be proven true. We might wake up next to gates of pure gold, gazing in awe at the Christ who welcomes us home. We could find ourselves gliding upon ethereal waves to the liberating shores of Nirvana. Or perhaps we get caught in a cycle of death and rebirth, passing through the ages as our spirit is recycled again and again in accordance with our karma. Perhaps a combination of these things is true, or maybe none of them are. I cannot see beyond this life, and therefore can't know what happens after it. But what I can do is answer the question of what the truest death, one that is cruel and infinite, would be, and I pray it happens to no one, not in this age or the next. Some people believe in complete annihilation, the idea that we cease to exist after the life leaves our bodies. Some do not believe in a soul, or that our existence here is anything beyond chance, and that when the universe inevitably meets a time without us in it, the gears of nature will still turn, and that we as individuals were no more than a single drop of fuel in its eternal engine. But what if we were even less than that? We can find solace in the truth that each of us affects the universe in some small way, no matter how short or meaningless our individual lives appear to be. But what if our existence was completely erased, even for the short time we lived on this planet? What if our soul, assuming it exists at all, was also destroyed? Would that not be the truest form of death? To have the body, the soul, and finally the evidence of one's place here eradicated. That is annihilation in its totality. It goes beyond simply dying, because it is the removal of every effect you had on the universe, and for all your descendants to never hear your name nor feel the ripples undulating outward at the end of your life, whether they be recognized as yours or not. I believe that is the worst way for a story to end. It is utterly hopeless. Then again, perhaps the truest death is to have never existed in the first place. Death by default, by lack of chance. That's enough thinking for now. I'll end up going in circles at this rate, and I'm already so tired I think it's best I keep my mind from running. When I get lost in thought, I'd rather not say. But still, I do wonder, has there ever been a person that was annihilated entirely? If I think of them in a hypothetical manner, wondering in awe at the very possibility of their existence and its effect being erased, is that not an effect in and of itself? Have they not altered the universe in some way, even if it was only me to consider the mere potential of their being? I don't know, but it is intriguing to think about. Nevertheless, these recordings are not meant to be my own rambles and late-night musings, so I'll cut away my personal thoughts for now. So bear with me as we dive into another story from Silverwind, and prepare yourself. Tonight's tale is an especially grim one indeed. The crafting of the Mirrolith, year 4096, the Fourth Era. Of the world's habitable places, the mountains of Arbelisle contained the most magic. It cracked the rocky wastes with quiet teal and hidden magenta veins, and rippled through the faces of cliffs. In the wetlands, it illuminated the algae-stricken waters with a sickly gloom, almost like the odorous smog of an acid rain. In the ancient ruins, a deep, untainted magic still breathed. There were 100-meter-tall rings half-sunken in the valleys, and spires that had crumbled long ago. Underground tunnels held fragments of a past civilization with relics no hand could touch and no eye could behold, not without succumbing to madness or fatal illness. Streaks of magical energy pulsed weakly in all the stones, dormant for millennia without any manner of drawing it out. Only the peoples of old knew the purpose of these structures, and only they understood its magic. Even the Dragonish, who dwelled within this realm of archaic history, could not manipulate the energy that saturated their lands, for it was beyond their comprehension to do so. It was the synthesis which left the world in decay. More than 4,000 years ago, a great beast attached itself to Silverwind, turning the lush grasslands into marshes, the deep oceans into waterless chasms, the forests into noxious woodlands nearly inhospitable, and the mountains into rocky wastelands. Every corner of the world was wrapped in thorns, sickly with the stench of swampland, and putrid with the color gray. The oldest texts mentioned a sun, but it had not been witnessed since the world fell prey, and all the realms were beneath a cloudy sky that never dissipated. Arbelisle held the last remnants of the old world, and for that reason did the Dragonish remain there, as to study what caused the synthesis to fuse with a planet to which it did not belong. They dwelled inside the mountains, carving whole cities from the stone. Magic pervaded every aspect of their lives, and younglings were taught to respect it, to study all secrets buried within the vaults of ages long forgotten, and to collaborate. They bred powerful sorcerers and experienced archaeologists. They made extraordinary progress in the fields of geology, enchantment, and the interpretation of ancient hieroglyphics, and most importantly, they crafted numinous devices known all throughout Silverwind. All magical staves originated from Arbelisle, imbued with the magical essence that flowed below ground. They enchanted gems that could store memories of the deceased, cloaks that muted one's presence, and they fashioned books with ink invisible to all but the writer. Their artifacts were renowned throughout the peoples of Silverwind, but even so, there was one sorcerer of unparalleled notoriety, and it was he who sought to construct the Mirrolith. Cern Coldrenth had always been fascinated by the synthesis, but he not only wanted to study the artifacts from ancient days, he wanted to physically view the past with his own eyes. He wanted to see the old world and what Silverwind used to be. He wished to know what wars they fought, what infrastructure they had, what sprawling landscapes once existed, and how the synthesis first came to be. He had spent 200 years studying a means to view what had come and gone, and finally, after all his research, a possibility came to light. The Mirrolith would do all he wanted and more. If his calculations were correct, Cern could not just see the past, but step into it. He could walk amongst the peoples of old and learn from them. He could study their languages, their magic, their culture, and if possible, witness the initial moments of the synthesis, his ultimate goal. The quest to complete this device was by no means a simple one, and he spent decades finding the right materials and artifacts. What he needed was scattered all over the world. One leg of the journey required 3 expeditions into an ancient catacomb, the largest of its kind. The secrets buried within were innumerable, and every stone relic, every piece of rock imbued with magic, needed to be unearthed and examined. He was searching for the homunculus, a spherical apparatus of legend that was said to manipulate the spaces between. For CERN, this implied locations that were neither in the present nor the past, reality nor oblivion, and if his hypothesis was correct, these paths would be crucial to navigating the strands of time. On the third expedition, and after 5 years, he located the artifact. Some of the materials he needed, however, were more natural, such as large quantities of the world's rarest gemstone, nunexium, a substance thought to have formed during the Great Starvation, back when the synthesis first began. It was most often sunken in the marshlands of the Dark Elves, but according to surveys by the archaeologists of Arbelisle, there was likely a massive vein in the eastern mountains, somewhere in the rocky wastelands that once housed the great lakes of old. CERN counted on this, and his gamble paid off. 2 months of intensive searching brought him to a primeval lake bed, and inside a gaping crack in the land, behind large thickets of thorns and poisonous flora, he found an underground strain of the gemstone. More than 100 crates of the material were gathered. Gold, silver, and enchanted runes were also needed. The Mirrolith required previously unfeasible levels of magical energy, but with enough enchantments to fuel the device, there was a chance, however slim, that it might actually work. Sustaining its use would require additional incantations, the likes of which CERN would weave himself. When all the materials had been gathered, 6 long months were spent in the laboratory in the underground city of Timberoth. He and 12 others toiled with spells and incantations, filters and elixirs, division and fusion. They rebuilt the homunculus by altering its pieces and providing variation to its inscribed runes, and when CERN tested the relic for himself, when the metallic, energized orb hovered in the place between his 2 hands, he caught the faintest glimpse of existence without time. He saw an empty universe, a lifeless oblivion. This, of course, was enough to give him energy, and upon documenting his experience, he pursued the Mirrolith's completion with greater fervency than before. With the slow but steady passage of time, he had created what he, and all who embarked on this journey with him, believed to be a device capable of interacting with the past. Streams of magic poured into the pool which housed the object, glowing ambient blue, shimmering green, and amethyst purple. A dark power vibrated from the pylons, and the enchanted gems surrounding the pool gleamed nearly to the point of melting. He had finally done it. The Mirrolith was complete. The traversal of time awaited him. The mystery of the synthesis was almost solved. All his work amalgamated for the moment he would behold the lost ages of Silverwind, and those mysteries were close enough to taste. "We will begin the journey now," he said to those around him. They nodded in fearful awe, uncertain of what lay ahead. A set of stone steps led into the pool, and CERN descended them gradually, letting the warm, magical energy consume him limb by limb. Once he set foot on the timeless plains, nobody would be able to pull him back. That would be his responsibility. For him, he would be gone many years as he studied the peoples of old and the synthesis, but for those with him, he would return almost instantaneously. Somehow he would need to construct another Mirrolith in the past, adjust its attunement to the proper year, month, day, and hour, then make the leap back to his time. Following this, the people of Silverwind would have knowledge so profound, their technology and magic would leap by thousands of years. When the magical energy was waist high, CERN did not glance to the people around him, nor did he say goodbye. He dove into the fluid and began the crossing immediately. Like the acidic mixture of a bubbling hot spring, CERN felt the energy squirming beneath his scales. He felt it smoldering on his eyes, crawling down his mouth and throat, breathing all around him like some kind of living entity. Magic. He was among the most educated in Arbelisle, and had practiced it his whole life. But this was like nothing he'd ever seen or felt before. The colors were vibrant, almost like staring through a drop of rain in a forest of lights, and his body seemed to not only be within the energy, rather it was the energy. He had fused with it, and felt more alive and powerful than ever. This carried on for little more than a few seconds, and when the lights calmed, when the energy faded, he emerged from the pool, erupting from its surface with a gasping breath. Strands of magical energy dripped from his body, and at last he breathed air and not fluid. What he noticed immediately, however, was the flavor of the air. It tasted fresh, but that couldn't be. All of Silverwind, even the underground cities of Arbelisle, tasted of decay. The whole world was littered with smog and noxious fumes, and in some instances entire regions were left uninhabitable. How, then, could the air be fresh? How could it be anything but tainted? He smelled no foulness, no corrosion, no cough-inducing gases, and upon exiting the pool, he found that his body and clothes dripped no liquid. In fact, the pool itself was dry now, and like crushed pieces of shattered ceramic reforming to become a whole vase again, the ground converted to a natural state, bearing no evidence of dragonish architectural design. "Have I succeeded?" he whispered. As he exited the laboratory, the world broke down around him, transforming into a perfectly natural condition. Then he laid eyes on the city of Timberoth, a massive subterranean cavity where thousands of dragonish lived, but not a single one was in sight. Statues melted into rocks, structures ground to dust and vanished, bridges faded from existence, underground springs formed, and vibrant gardens wrapped much of the ground and walls. The mountain itself began to erode, and large gaps formed in the ceiling, allowing light from the sky to beam down and give lush vegetation and jungle flora a chance to live. In but a few minutes' time, all signs of intelligent life faded, and in the old realm of Timberoth, where future and past now met, the earthy scent of wilderness brushed through the ferns, the vines, and the undergrowth, as if to say, "Welcome to nowhere," and CERN was standing amongst it all. "I've done it," he mumbled. "But in what year am I? What is the world like? Where will I find people? What are they?" He scrambled eagerly toward the mountain exit and discovered that the natural cave system which led to and from Timberoth was still there. The tunnels lacked steps or a main road, didn't smell of sulfur or rot, and the closer he got to the exit, the fresher the air became. When at last he burst free of the underground, his eyes were blinded. Never before had he witnessed such overwhelming light. "What is this?" he cried while shielding his face. When his eyes adjusted to the brightness, CERN gazed out from the mountain, over a range of beautiful slopes and hills. He saw a glistening river, and each twist of its body was like a serene breath on a calm, quiet day. There were trees of many colors, flame red, burnt umber, soft orange, and faded green, and they cast their leaves into the wind, layering the ground with many shades. In the sky were healthy, thick clouds behind which lurked the blinding sun. Shadows were cast over the valley, and in the sunlight, all the colors became significantly brighter. Was this what Arbelisle used to be like before the synthesis attacked Silverwind? Nobody had beheld the sun in thousands of years. Nobody had seen the world in such a healthy, living state in just as long. In his time, all was decay. All was dead. In the distance, CERN noticed a trail of smoke rising from the woods, then another close by. There must have been a village, or cottage. Perhaps they were dragonish, and if so, then there was a chance he could communicate with them, even if their languages were different. Soon he was wandering through the forest, where all manner of life existed, and none of what he saw was hostile. There were countless species of winged birds, scurrying rodents in the trees. He knelt to drink from a stream, and was met with the sweetest, purest water. Leaves cascaded slowly to the ground, and sunlight speckled through the canopies and onto the forest floor. A soothing wind caressed his scales, and his slender tongue sniffed the air. This world was so beautiful, too beautiful. It was almost hard to believe he had not left Silverwind. Upon reaching the source of the smoke, Cern discovered several small cottages, a watermill, vegetable gardens, and an inlet that appeared to be part of a larger body of water tucked behind the nearest mountain. The smell of spice caught his tongue, indicating that a midday meal was being prepared. At first, he checked the nearest cottage and knocked on its door. Nobody answered. "Hello," he called out. Again there was no voice nor movement from inside. After knocking a second and third time, he decided to peek inside the window, using both hands to form shade over his eyes. A single room lay behind the glass, and within, a fireplace glowed with a pot dangling over the flames. "Surely they could not be gone for long," he said. Cern turned back to the village, eyeing the other homes. Their thatch roofs were green with trimmed grass, while their stone walls were littered with moss. How quaint it was, and yet he saw no people. The second cottage was in the exact same state as the first, empty, and when he gently pushed the door, allowing it to screech open, he stepped inside to find the bed unmade and the fire burning. But again, no villagers were in sight. Had they just left? To where? Their fires were unattended and food was still cooking. They would not have gone far, most likely not beyond earshot or eyesight. The last building he checked was the watermill, and he walked over a small wooden bridge to reach its front door. It had 2 stories, a small garden on the upper balcony, and the quaintest tower in which a brass bell hung. Sunlight splashed over the plastered brick walls. The water wheel turned, splashing during each rotation. If the villagers were anywhere, it was there. He used the knocker 3 times before gaining boldness, at which point he entered the watermill. The first floor had a low ceiling barely taller than his head, and there were dusty wooden beams turning metal cogs and a grindstone. All of the machinery was working as intended, but nobody was around to use it. "Is it possible I am alone?" Cern muttered. "But how?" He wandered upstairs to the second floor, in which there was a hallway lined with bedrooms, a recreation room, something like a drinkery, and one door at the end that remained closed. This door he opened last, and what he discovered on the other side sent a bolt of fear through his skeleton. On the wooden walls and floorboards, a black mold was spreading, poisoning the room. It reached in tendrils, set off spores, and from its epicenter on the black wall, he noticed a bulging mass like the mutilated remains of a giant eye socket. There was no eye within, but it felt ominously present in the heap of flesh. "This shouldn't be here," Cern said. Cern covered his mouth with cloth from his shirt, then approached slowly. The mold was spreading right before his eyes, encompassing the room. It caused instant decay. It broke down the wood like acid, making it drip and steam, and it gave off fumes so offensive they alone could put someone through eternal sleep. He had seen it innumerable times in the past, and upon entering the room, he knew undoubtedly that it was a portion of the synthesis. "But how?" he gasped. "How did it get here? I have arrived prior to the synthesis arrival. Just as the black mold started to bubble up, it spread faster and tentacles began to form from the epicenter. It soon wrapped the entire room, appearing from the wood and dissolving it simultaneously. To escape, CERN had no choice but to run. He fumbled from that room and into the hallway, staggering as he went. The mold chased him, sprouting more tentacles and vine-like tendrils that reached out, wriggling for something to consume. He shuffled downstairs as a portion of the watermill collapsed. Part of the upstairs floor caved in, with a wood-splintering crash. This was impossible. It couldn't be. The synthesis was not supposed to be on Silverwind yet, and even if it was, its origins were not in Arbelisle. How did it get there? More importantly, how did it find him? CERN continued his stumbling escape, climbing over rubble and blundering to the exit. Once outside, he ran across the bridge and tripped, toppling into the grass. Only then did he slow down. He used what fearlessness remained to look behind him at the watermill, and found that pure darkness was cracking through the walls. Giant tentacles were writhing, grabbing anything in their path and crushing it. A cloud of black mold was rising to the atmosphere, pouring from the watermill like smoke. "This cannot be," CERN rasped. "The synthesis can't be here. It's not yet time." But as he spoke those words, one of the slithering tendrils wrapped around his ankle, and though he attempted to tear it away, another came for him. Soon enough, he was grabbed by 8 of them, and against his will they dragged him into the watermill, where a falling beam struck his head along the way, sending him into an unconscious state. This creature was the embodiment of decay, the heart of sorrow, and the spirit of apathy, and now, though he traveled back in time to study its rival, the synthesis had come to find him instead. For how long CERN slept was unknown, and when he awakened, the world around him was anything but the world he saw before. Hazy eyes revealed a place of shadow, of ilk and putrefaction. Somehow he could hear the scraping grind of the millstone and the clunking of the rusty gears. The noises were loud in his ears, overpowering in fact. He felt a slimy, gooey tentacle wrapped around his body, and while in the air, a warm draft met his scales. Was it a breath? When his vision fully returned, he got a better look at his surroundings. Like a jungle of living plants, the monster's appendages squirmed around him, sealing him in a tomb of consumption. He couldn't break free. He couldn't even move. All his limbs were restrained, and as he attempted in vain to free himself, the noxious stench of the synthesis worked its way onto his tongue, and he could not bear to fight it any longer. Even there, in a world untainted by its devastating power, CERN was followed. His magic proved useless. His muscles were weak. His stomach churned. Escape was impossible. And in that moment of realization, he heard the tendrils begin to roil with a sound that was of a liquid nature, like shovels turning damp sediment into mud. He felt the warm breath once more. As for a face, an eye, a body, none of these things were present themselves. Instead, a voice spoke directly into his ears, unfathomable in depth, like some kind of beast hiding in the world's deepest cave, and each syllable was acutely well thought. "The world is mine," rumbled the voice. The tentacles twisted around him. "You will not take it from me." CERN paused, ceasing to struggle. He swallowed and caught his breath. "Take? I seek nothing from you. I only want to understand why you've destroyed our home." "You seek to destroy me." An acidic liquid was exuded from the tentacles, singeing his flesh. CERN cried out, "Silverwind belongs to us. It is not yours to consume." I consume because I must. Ignorance shrouds you. The voice waited, almost as if the synthesis was considering its captive's point of view, but its silence was truly brief. To the past you ran, searching for an answer. From a different time I chased you. Nothing can stop me from devouring your world, and in labor it will remain until my hunger is sated. I cannot be overcome. There was a pause, a tightening of the tentacles. You will perish and be forgotten. No time, past nor present, will remember your name. The Mirrolith will be no more, and all traces of its existence will fade. You have brought this on yourself. What will you do? Cern asked. The next spoken words sent a shiver up Cern's spine, yet he did not fight back. I will erase you. More tendrils and tentacles moved in suddenly, engulfing him in a matter of seconds, and it was not physical pain which devoured him, but spiritual. He could feel the soul within his body begin to snap. He could feel his memories being stripped away. All the years he spent researching were gone in the blink of an eye, and nothing could restore them. All his intelligence changed to ignorance. Death was the fate of those who stood against the synthesis. True death. For though his body would surely be slain, his spirit would be ripped apart, erased from time and reality. I do not wish to die. Cern tried to remember his goals, his past, his family, but everything was gone. He had no memories but that of the synthesis, no desire but to be obliterated. Cern Coldrenth was gone, and in his place was a counterfeit that could never return to Silverwind, never embark on a journey again, and never live a normal life. When the last of his memories faded, his soul began to break away, to crumble like a statue of sand, and he felt his mind shatter. Where was he? Why was he there? What was his purpose? Where did he come from? Whose voice did he remember? And how could he escape? He couldn't. He knew it was impossible, and that's all he knew. It was time for his world to come to an end. With the mere basics of consciousness, Cern could hear a voice, deep and ancient. It spoke directly to his fractured soul. He did not know to whom it belonged, but he recognized it. Farewell, traveler of time, the voice said. There is no afterlife for you, but there will be rest. Infinite, timeless rest. Embrace it, for you will have nothing else in eternity. And as the voice faded to silence, so too did he. Cern Coldrenth was no more, and nobody would follow in his footsteps. Everything he accomplished vanished behind the curtains of time.